Have you ever reached the end of a day, a week, or even a month, and felt a profound and unsettling disconnect between how busy you were and what you actually accomplished? You felt the frantic energy, the constant hum of activity. Your calendar was a mosaic of meetings. Your inbox was a relentless tide of requests, and your phone vibrated with the endless chatter of a dozen different platforms. You were undeniably working. But when you try to point to a single, meaningful, substantial piece of work that you brought into the world, something that stretched your abilities and created real, lasting value, you came up empty. It's a uniquely modern form of exhaustion, a hollowness that comes from a life of constant motion, but no forward momentum. It's the nagging suspicion that your professional life has become a performance of productivity, rather than the practice of it. Why is this feeling so universal? Why do so many of us, in an age with unprecedented access to information and tools for creation, feel like we're running in place, our creative and intellectual potential slowly draining away into 1,000 tiny, trivial tasks? This isn't a personal failing. It's a systemic one. We live in a world that has mistaken responsiveness for effectiveness, a world that celebrates a visible, frantic churn of shallow activity over the quiet, unseen, and often uncomfortable process of profound creation. And in this noisy landscape, a computer science professor from Georgetown University named Cal Newport began to feel this same friction. He wasn't a self-help guru or a productivity influencer. He was a scientist, a builder of mathematical proofs, an academic who saw a growing chasm between the demands of the modern world and the requirements for producing work that truly matters. He became obsessed not just with identifying this problem, but with dissecting it, understanding its roots, and reverse engineering a solution. This is not just a story of a book. It's a story of his quest to reclaim the essential human ability to think, create, and work deeply in an age that seems determined to make it impossible. Before Cal Newport could articulate the solution, he first had to live inside the problem, to understand its architecture and its insidious appeal. He was a product of the very world he would later critique. As a young academic and writer, he inhabited the digital ecosystem of the knowledge worker. He saw his colleagues, brilliant minds capable of extraordinary intellectual feats, tethered to their inboxes, treating every incoming email as an urgent summons. He witnessed the rise of the open plan office, a design philosophy sold on the promise of collaboration, but which in reality became a cathedral distraction, where the stray question or the casual conversation could shatter an hour of fragile concentration. The prevailing ethos was one of constant connectivity. To be offline was to be a slacker. To not respond to an email within the hour was a sign of disorganization. Busyness, he observed, had become a proxy for productivity. In the absence of clear indicators of what it means to be valuable in an information economy, many of us have defaulted to an industrial age indicator: visible activity, answering emails, attending meetings, posting on internal chat systems. These are all visible, tangible actions. They create a reassuring hum of effort. The problem, as Newport began to realize, is that this hum is often the sound of intellectual stagnation. The most valuable work in our economy, inventing a new algorithm, writing a persuasive legal argument, developing a complex business strategy, creating a piece of art, is almost always a product of intense, uninterrupted concentration. It doesn't look busy. It often looks like a person staring at a wall or a screen or a piece of paper, completely still for hours on end. It is a quiet, solitary, and deeply internal process. But our professional culture had begun to actively punish this kind of stillness, mistaking it for idleness. The tools we adopted, designed to make communication more efficient, were creating a state of perpetual cognitive fragmentation. Each notification, each email, each tap on the shoulder was a tiny cognitive tax, forcing a context switch that depleted our limited reserves of mental energy. We were training our brains, day in and day out, to crave novelty, to seek out the next little hit of information, the next quick task to complete. We were, in effect, systematically dismantling our ability to focus. Newport saw this not just in others, but in the pull he felt in his own work. The desire to just quickly check his email one more time, the allure of a social media feed as a break from a difficult proof. He realized that the path of least resistance in our modern world leads directly to a state of shallow, distracted, and ultimately unfulfilling work. The stakes were and are immense. It's not just about getting more done. It's about the quality of what gets done. It's about the difference between a life spent reacting to the demands of others and a life spent creating something new and valuable for the world. He understood that without a radical and deliberate intervention, the future of knowledge work will be a future of exquisitely managed mediocrity. This deep diagnosis led Newport to his first, and perhaps most crucial, breakthrough. He didn't just feel that this state of distraction was bad. He set out to prove, with a researcher's rigor, that its opposite was disproportionately valuable. He gave this opposite a name: deep work. He defined it as professional activities performed in a state of distraction-free concentration that push your cognitive capabilities to their limit. These efforts create new value, improve your skills, and are hard to replicate. This wasn't just a clever branding of the concept of focus. It was a stark economic argument. In his research, he identified two core abilities that were becoming both increasingly rare and increasingly valuable in our economy: the ability to quickly master hard things, and the ability to produce an elite level in terms of both quality and speed. Both of these abilities, he argued, are a direct function of your capacity for deep work. To master a complex new skill, whether the programming language or a legal specialty, requires intense, uninterrupted study. To produce work that stands out in a crowded field requires you to harness your full cognitive potential, free from the drag of context switching. He found powerful historical echoes of this idea. He tells the story of the psychoanalyst Carl Jung, who, at a critical point in his career, felt his intellectual clarity waning amidst the pressures of his clinical practice and academic life in Zurich. His solution was not to optimize a schedule or find a new productivity app. It was to build a retreat, a simple stone house on the shore of Lake Zurich. He called the Bollingen Tower. There was no electricity, no running water. He would retreat there for months at a time, chopping his own wood and cooking his own meals. But most importantly, he had a private office where he could lock himself away for hours of uninterrupted writing and thinking. It was in this state of profound, isolated depth that he produced some of his most seminal and revolutionary works. This wasn't vacation. It was a cognitive sanctuary, an architecture designed specifically for deep work. Newport then contrasted this historical example with modern case studies to show its timeless relevance. He tells the story of a writer, a fictionalized amalgam named Jason Ben, a freelance computer programmer trying to survive in the hyper-competitive world of tech. Ben was good, but not great. He was constantly struggling to keep up, learning new frameworks in a piecemeal way, his days fragmented by client emails and administrative tasks. He made a radical change. For a period of 18 months, he drastically cut back on his shallow obligations. He trained his clients to expect slower responses. He went off the grid for entire mornings, diving into a single complex new programming skill. The process was arduous and mentally taxing, but at the end of that period, he emerged as a master of a highly sought-after, difficult skill. His income didn't just grow, it more than doubled. He went from being a commodity to a craftsman, all because he had the discipline to trade the comforting illusion of shallow busyness for the transformative power of deep work. The principle became clear. In an economy that is automating shallow tasks and rewarding those who can work with complex systems, the ability to go deep is no longer a soft skill. It is the core currency of value creation. But this powerful realization immediately presented a complication, a second, harder truth. If deep work is so obviously valuable, why is almost nobody doing it? Knowing the destination is one thing. Navigating the treacherous terrain to get there is another entirely. Newport understood that simply acknowledging the value of depth wasn't enough. The forces of distraction are not passive. They are aggressive, relentless, and deeply embedded in our biology and our culture. The modern knowledge worker is like someone trying to build a sandcastle in the middle of a rising tide. Willpower alone is a pitifully inadequate defense. Our brains are wired to be drawn to novelty and react to social cues. The ping of a new email, the buzz of a text message. These are engineered to hijack our attentional systems. Relying on sheer grit to resist these temptations moment to moment is a losing battle. Willpower, as research has shown, is a finite resource that depletes with use. A day spent constantly fighting off the urge to check your inbox is a day where your best cognitive resources are wasted on the fight itself, not on the work. This led Newport to his second major discovery. To succeed in deep work, you must move beyond good intentions and cultivate a life of rigorous structure. You need rituals and routines that make going deep a non-negotiable part of your schedule, removing the need to decide in the moment. He outlines 4 distinct philosophies for integrating deep work into your life. The first is a monastic approach, practiced by figures like the famed computer scientist Donald Knuth, who famously avoids email altogether and lives in a state of near-permanent, secluded focus. This is the most extreme and, for most, impractical model. Then there's a bimodal approach, exemplified by Carl Jung's tower. This involves dividing your time into clearly defined stretches, where some periods are dedicated entirely to deep work, free from any other obligation, while the rest of your time is left open for everything else. The writer Walter Isaacson, for instance, would lock himself away in a secluded cabin to write his biographies, completely inaccessible, and then re-emerge into his normal, connected life. The most practical for many is the rhythmic approach. This philosophy argues that the easiest way to start is to create a simple, repeatable habit. The goal is to generate a rhythm of deep work in your life, perhaps by scheduling the first 90 minutes of every single workday for your most important task, no exceptions. The chain method, where you mark an X on a calendar for every day you complete your session, creates a visual chain you don't want to break, building momentum. Finally, there's a journalistic approach, where you fit deep work in wherever you can find a free moment in your day. Newport cautions that this is the hardest method, best suited for those who are already masters of discipline, as it requires the ability to switch into a state of intense focus on a dime. But the structures went even deeper than just scheduling. He argued that we must retrain our ability to concentrate by systematically embracing boredom. The habit of pulling out a smartphone every time we have a spare 2 minutes, in line at the coffee shop, waiting for a meeting to start, is a disaster for our focus. It trains our mind to expect constant novelty and stimulation, making it incapable of tolerating the sustained, often uncomfortable focus required for deep work. The solution? Be bored. Let your mind wander. Resisting that twitch to grab your phone is a form of attention-strengthening exercise. He realized that a commitment to deep work isn't just a professional strategy. It's a lifestyle that requires a fundamental rewiring of our daily habits, from how we schedule our days to how we spend our idle moments. As Newport synthesized these 2 major principles, that deep work is immensely valuable and that it requires a systematic, structured approach to cultivate, he arrived at a final, unifying aha moment. The true power of this idea wasn't just about becoming more productive or successful in a conventional sense. It wasn't merely a hack for getting a promotion or finishing a project faster. The grand synthesis was that a life built around deep work is not just a more productive life. It is a fundamentally better, more meaningful, and more human life. This insight elevates the entire concept from the realm of career advice into the realm of life philosophy. He found evidence for this on multiple levels. Neurologically, when you focus intensely on a specific skill, you're not just practicing. You're triggering a biological process where cells in your brain wrap layers of a fatty tissue called myelin around the relevant neurons. This process, called myelination, allows the corresponding brain circuit to fire more effortlessly and effectively. In a very real, physical sense, deep work is the act of building a better brain, of upgrading your own cognitive hardware through deliberate practice. But the most profound discovery was psychological. He connected the experience of deep work to the seminal research of psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi on the state of flow. Flow is that state of optimal experience where you are so engrossed in an activity that you lose track of time, your sense of self dissolves, and you feel a deep sense of enjoyment and control. Csikszentmihalyi's research found, counterintuitively, that people report being happiest not when they are relaxing or indulging in passive leisure, but when their minds or bodies are stretched to their limits in a voluntary effort to accomplish something difficult and worthwhile. Deep work, Newport realized, is a direct pathway to inducing a state of flow in our professional lives. The very conditions required for deep work, a clear goal, immediate feedback on your progress, and a perfect balance between challenge and skill, are the same conditions required for flow. In a world where many feel a sense of aimlessness and existential dread, where our days are a chaotic blur of shallow reactivity, deep work offers an antidote. It provides a source of profound meaning and satisfaction that comes from craftsmanship, from the act of applying your full skill and attention to create something of value. A day filled with 4 hours of deep, focused work followed by 4 hours of shallow tasks feels infinitely more satisfying and less draining than a day of 8 straight hours of fragmented, email-driven chaos. The ultimate aha moment is this. The battle between depth and shallowness is not just about productivity. It is a battle for the soul of our work, and by extension, for the quality of our lives. To choose deep work is to choose a life of substance and meaning over a life of distracted triviality. Our journey began with a question that haunts the modern professional. How can we be so busy, yet so unfulfilled? We've traveled to the chaotic landscape of shallow work, a world of constant connectivity that promises efficiency but delivers fragmentation. We then uncovered Cal Newport's first great truth, that in this new economy, the ability to perform deep work is a superpower, the very skill that creates lasting value and builds remarkable careers. But we also face the difficult complication that our brains and our culture actively conspire against the state of depth. This led us to the second truth, that deep work isn't a matter of willpower, but of building a system, a set of rituals and routines that protect your focus as a sacred resource. And finally, we arrived at the grand synthesis, the profound realization that this isn't just about what you produce, but who you become. A life of depth is a life of meaning, a life that leverages the biological and psychological foundations of human flourishing. The story is powerful, the evidence is compelling, but the final chapter is yours to write. The blueprint is surprisingly simple, though not easy. First, you must choose your philosophy. Will you be monastic, bimodal, or rhythmic? Decide how you will architect deep work into your life. Second, schedule it. Treat your deep work blocks with the same reverence you would a meeting with your most important client. Put them on your calendar and protect them ruthlessly. Third, begin the slow and steady process of retraining your attention. The next time you're standing in line or waiting for a friend, resist the urge. Let yourself be bored. It is in these quiet moments that you will rebuild the mental muscles required for a life of focus. Understanding these ideas is the first and most crucial step, but true transformation only comes from action. It's a choice you have to make, not just once, but every single day. A choice to turn off the noise and turn toward the meaningful. If this journey resonates with you, if you feel that pull toward a life of greater depth and substance, then you're in the right place. This channel is a community for people who are tired of the shallow and are committed to building something more. By subscribing, you're not just clicking a button. You're making a commitment to yourself, a declaration that you are ready to do the hard, meaningful work that truly matters. The world will not grant you this focus. You must claim it for yourself.